Now we're going to add the vinegar. Knowing the right time to add the vinegar makes all of the difference. That's what differentiates your red velvet cake from every other red cake and makes it the red velvet cake.
Hi guys, welcome to our channel. Today we're making cakes. Red velvet and chocolate cake. Please don't change the channel. Thank you for watching us.
Making our red velvet, the first thing we should do is to get our buttermilk ready. If you have an already made buttermilk, you have to skip this stage because you've gone past it. But if you do not have, just watch me closely. We're going to be mixing milk and vinegar. Milk plus vinegar equals buttermilk. For this recipe, I would combine half cup of milk, that's 125 mils, and a teaspoon and a half of vinegar. Another ingredient that gives the red velvet cake a unique taste is the addition of chocolate powder. Cocoa powder gives it this subtle chocolatey yummy taste, but you can't tell because it's color red, right? All right, so to make it, I'm going to be mixing my cocoa powder. I'm using a teaspoon of cocoa powder and I'll combine it with a tablespoon and a half of hot water to dilute it. I'll combine the cocoa powder with my coloring. Ideally, you should use paste coloring for red velvet cakes because it gives it the red color you need effortlessly. But I couldn't find the paste because, I couldn't find it at this point. So I had to use the liquid coloring. I started off with 2 tablespoons, but it was too light. Every coloring has its own function. The paste coloring rather, and the powder coloring works better for the red velvet cake. Yeah, so I added 2 tablespoons initially and I felt it was fine, but along the line I had to add to give it a brilliant red color. Because if it's not red, it's definitely not red velvet. Another important ingredient for the red velvet cake is vanilla flavoring, vanilla extract. But for this recipe, I'll be using butterscotch extract, butterscotch flavoring because I love the taste also. It works well and it has a very strong and unique aroma. So I'm going to be using 1 teaspoon of butterscotch flavoring. So if you cannot find butterscotch flavoring, it's fine. Go ahead and use your vanilla extract for the authentic traditional red velvet taste. And at this point, I'll run through the ingredients. This is my buttermilk we mixed earlier. This is my flour. I'm going to be working with 175 grams of flour for this recipe. Then this is baking powder. We're using a half teaspoon of baking powder and half teaspoon of the bicarbonate of soda, that's baking soda. Now for my egg, I'll be using 125 grams of egg. For sugar, we're using 125 grams of sugar. And for butter also, we're going to be using 125 grams of butter. So this almost shares the same recipe with a pound cake, but the only difference is the flour is higher by a little bit. Okay, so I'm adding my bicarbonate of soda and baking powder into my flour mixture, and then I proceed to beat my butter and sugar together. So beating basically is aerating it, trapping in some air into it. So I start firstly with my butter. When it's softened, then I pour in my sugar gradually. And note, I'm using the granulated sugar, not the icing sugar, the regular granulated sugar we use for home use. So you beat it around for about 10 minutes or 5 minutes, yeah? Then introduce your sugar. After that, you keep beating it till the sugar is dissolved in it. With butter, it's almost impossible for the sugar to be dissolved totally, but you have to try to get it about 75 to 80% dissolved in it. So let's just keep mixing till we get to our desired 30 minutes. I'm about to put in my egg. So we're going to introduce the egg gradually so the mixture does not curdle. Yeah, so put the egg slightly, reduce the speed of your hand mixer, and stirring all of the egg. You see, I'm putting it little by little, poco a poco. Yeah, so after that we're done with this stage and we'll move on to the next stage. Okay, so while you're mixing, Maya is going to butter the pan. Buttering the pan basically means applying fat and flour, shaking flour into the pan, so when you pour your batter in it, it doesn't stick. You do this when you do not have a baking sheet and you just want to bake. Okay, so I showed you how to do it without a baking sheet. Just rub some butter in it and shake some flour over it. So now we are stirring our mixture. It feels just right. Yeah. And we're going to preheat our oven. I'm going to be using 175 degrees centigrade. Yeah, for the oven. If you have a thermometer or your oven has an inbuilt thermometer, you can check. Most times, because of my oversabi, I like to check to be sure, even though the measurement is written out there on the oven. All right, my girls decided to help me mix. Mira mixed, Maya mixed, and together we are making a family red velvet cake. They think it's fun now, but when they are all grown, I ask them to do it. That's where the trouble starts, right? All right, so we're mixing, and we'll soon put in our butter mix. Okay, so I already combined my buttermilk and the cocoa powder mix. I don't know, I think I lost that clip, I couldn't find it. So after mixing our butter and sugar, we go in with our flour and baking powder mix. Please note, I used salted butter, so I wouldn't need to add any salt, but if you're using unsalted butter, yes, you would add. So firstly I start with my flour, then nextly I stir in my butter, milk, cocoa powder, butterscotch, and chocolatey mix. I don't know if I mentioned, but my butterscotch, I used a teaspoon of flavoring. All right, so when I was pouring it, I noticed the red velvet was not as strong as I wanted it to be. It's not strong enough for red. It's giving this pink velvet vibe or champagne velvet look, but for a red velvet, we want it red. Although sometimes the cake is quite tricky. It will look like pink when you just bake it, but by the next day the red pops out. But still it doesn't look red enough, so I would have to add extra. Remember what I said earlier, the paste coloring is good, better for red velvet. If you have authentic powder, yes, you can use it, but this liquid gives a lot of stress. Most time you might have to empty an entire bottle for it. Yeah, so I'll add a little bit extra so it comes out stronger. And after that, we pop in the oven and it's done. You see, this recipe is easy. You can even make it for Valentine's Day. You can use your pot and salt method. I'll do a video on that someday. If you want to see that video, please subscribe to this channel now. I post lots of educational content. I post content that is relevant to motherhood, cooking, teaching you how to manage your home, manage your kids, manage your finances, and helping you become a total woman, a woman who has everything under control. Yeah, so now my final flour is coming in now. And please, when you are stirring in your flour, one thing you should always remember is the speed should be very low, because once the speed is high, then the cake becomes dense after making it. Because I'm using a hand mixer, so I can regulate, but with a stand mixer, most times I prefer to stir in with the ladle, just stirring the flour slightly so it doesn't become dense. Once it's dense, you would never have a fluffy cake. So I'm just trying to shake out the batter from my whisk and take it out because I am done with that stage. Alright, the final phase is quite important. You remember I mentioned baking soda previously? Yes, any flavor, any cake that has baking soda needs an acid to activate it. There's acid in the buttermilk, but it's not strong enough. it should have lost its potency by now because it was used to convert the milk to buttermilk. So we're going to be pouring in vinegar to the mixture to help the baking soda in it, to activate the baking soda in it and give the cake the desired outcome. So that's the last thing that is going in. After you show your mixture is all right and you're about to pop in the oven, that'll be the last thing. You sprinkle it over it and you pop it into the oven. So I'm just stirring to be sure there are no residues at the base and everything is good. I have trust issues, so even when a machine does it, I still want to check with my hands to be sure there are no residues, there are no white patches underneath and unpleasant surprises here and there. So I'm just stirring to be double sure of that because it would soon be going into the oven. Okay, after now I'm going to be pouring in my vinegar like I mentioned earlier, and immediately the vinegar goes in, the cake would be popped into the oven. All right, so for this recipe we're using half tablespoon of vinegar. Half tablespoon is 1 teaspoon and a half. That's 1 teaspoon and half teaspoon combined to form half tablespoon in it. You might ask, is this step necessary? It's not just necessary, it's very important. Very important if you are achieving the velvet in the red velvet. If you're not just making a regular red cake, if you want a red velvet cake, yes, please do not skip this part. And even if you've been using other recipes, when you try this one, you realize, this is really good. This is dope. This is nice. Do you understand? Yeah, so we're about to pop it into the oven. We're transferring it to a pan now. So this is a round 8-inch pan. Yeah, it's just a small cake. Small cake, something we'll just eat, something for demonstration. And so yeah, so the red is not sharp, but at this point I know by tomorrow, by the next day, it would give me a brilliant red, which is awesome. So we're moving it to the baking pan, after which we shake it to ensure all air trapped in it while you're transferring to the pan is released.